Hey everybody, this is James Chen, aka JChensor, and you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, #1 rated podcast in the state of Hawaii, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, coming at you with another episode, and this one's going to be really phenomenal because I have with me the legendary, the one and only, the man known as the voice of Street Fighter, James Chen, aka JChensor. The man's a legend in the industry. He's the voice of Street Fighter for so long now. It's iconic. This man is simply iconic, and I'm so happy to have him on the show. He's the host of his own podcast, UltraChenTV. You can catch it on Twitch, and it's so amazing having him on here. Just someone who gets to go to EVO and do commentary for EVO, for Capcom Pro Tour, and for many other FGC events. It's such an honor having him on. So if you guys are ready to do it, I'm ready to do it. Let's go ahead and welcome James, or if you prefer to call him JChensor, onto the show. All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I have with me the one, the only, the immortal, the legendary James Chen. James, introduce yourself, man.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm James Chen, aka JChensor. Although no one calls me by that handle, but whatever, it's still there. So.
Oh man, so go ahead, man. Tell people where they can find you. Plug your social media, your projects, your Twitch, everything you're working on.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, so in case people don't know, I'm a commentator for the fighting game community. I do a lot of commentary, particularly for Street Fighter V. Although I'm trying to do as many other games as I can right now. And also, I consider myself a fighting game historian, an FGC historian, because I've been around for so long. But I like to try to get people. I try to help beginners get new people into the scene. So I do a lot of beginner content. And so you can find a lot of that stuff. I stream a lot on twitch.tv/JChensor. And then on Twitter, you can find me and ask me questions and talk to me and everything on twitter.com/JChensor. Also, I'm part of a team called UltraChenTV with Ultra David, of course, who is my main commentary partner. And we do a bunch of stuff on twitch.tv/UltraChenTV, as well as youtube.com/UltraChenTV. So if you can't catch my Twitch stream live, I put a lot of stuff on that YouTube channel, for example. So
Cool. Definitely. And folks, everyone who's listening, and when this video is up, when you're watching, make sure you go and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'll leave links to that down below, as well as his Twitch and his Twitter handle too. Anywhere else they can find you, or are you doing podcasts as well?
So the Tuesday show stuff that we do on UltraChenTV, so me and David, we always, every Tuesday evening Pacific time, we do like a recap of what's been going on in the FGC for the past week. That's you'll find that on the youtube.com/UltraChenTV, but you can also look up UltraChenTV on iTunes. We also upload the audio for the podcast, or you can find us on SoundCloud as UltraChenTV as well. Okay. I do have an Instagram at instagram.com/JChensor, but I've been really bad about updating it. So I'll try to be better about it. I'll try to be better.
No, I know how that is. Everyone's like, where's your Instagram post? I'm like,
Exactly.
About that, I'll get to it.
Okay.
No, I think the thing is, when it comes to social media, there's so many outlets right now. It's really difficult, especially with us being, adults. Like, it's hard to keep up with every single social media outlet.
Like Snapchat, forget it. Forget it. There will never be a Snapchat.com/JChensor. You know, it's just not happening. I'm sorry. I'm too old. Okay. Anyway.
No, I had Snapchat. I've actually had it since it came out. I probably used it like 2 or 3 times. I'm like,
right.
I don't understand this. What am I doing with it?
Right. Exactly.
Oh man. Hey, you guys should definitely get on Spotify. If anything, I'll send you the information how to get on it. It's super quick. It takes when you put your RSS feed into the link, and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It takes 3 minutes. Then they'll start whatever you have on iTunes. It'll start reposting.
Okay. I like that. That's a great idea. Okay. Spotify.com/UltraChenTV. There you go. Okay. Right. Coming soon.
All right, man. Do you mind like giving a brief background on yourself, like how you got into fighting games, and you know what makes you passionate about it, and how did you become like the world famous commentator that you are?
Man, how long do we have here?
It's up to you, brother. It's up to you.
I mean, I've been playing fighting games since Street Fighter II World Warrior, right? So my brother was going to college. It showed up at his college arcade at UCLA. He told me all about it. We found one local to where, you know, my parents lived, and we went there, and then I just never stopped playing. At that point, you know, I just became obsessed with Street Fighter, and it became like I just wanted to be one of the best at it. And then also I was very scientific about it. I liked studying it. And so after a while, I liked I've always just liked teaching fighting games for some reason. And so I always wanted to be an authority on things. So I started writing FAQs and stuff. And like, you know, I have like the definitive systems guide for Capcom versus SNK2. You know, I have like the combo fact for X-Men versus Street Fighter and all these things like that. And I was just really obsessed with that. So I started doing that, and then Shoryuken.com came out, and then I started contributing combo videos to that, and then tutorial videos, you know, teaching you how to take advantage of weird glitches and stuff. And so basically, I started going to this guy's garage where he had a gathering every Wednesday night, and they played fighting games there. And Alex Vi started showing up, and he started teaching people. So I wanted to support Alex and show up to there. And then one of the guys started streaming over there, and they were like, we need a commentator. And then Vi was like, hey, James, you're really good at explaining things. You get on the mic. And I was like, what? Okay. And I jumped on there, and I've never looked back. And of course, that whole thing became Wednesday Night Fight. So it literally started as some dude's garage, and now is the crazy thing at eSports Arena that we see every Wednesday. So, but yeah, that's basically when I started commentating. And, you know, I just kept going from that point forward. And, you know, like I said, I've been at the scene for so long. I know a lot of the guys who run Evo. So they asked me to do the top 8 commentary and stuff. And, you know, it just kept going from there.
Awesome, man. That's phenomenal. Like I follow your career for years.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. You are really considered, and, you know, I consider it myself. You are the voice of not only like Street Fighter, but the FGC as a whole.
Oh,
like
thank you.
When you think of FGC, your name's right there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So, like, what has been like some of the ups and downs that you've experienced, like in your FGC journey, and also with your commentary as well?
You know, it's funny because, like, you know, one of the reasons why I got into commentary is because when I heard very early commentary, I didn't like it. I was like, this is terrible. I hate this stuff. The thing about it is, I every time I want to talk smack about something, I want to make sure I understand what goes into it. So when Vi and them were like, hey, you do commentary, I was like, all right, I'll do commentary. I'll show them what's up. And I jumped on commentary, and it's hard. Like, commentary is actually really hard. You just like stand there and you're like, I don't even know what to talk about, you know, and it really takes a lot of practice and a lot of, you know, a lot of it, when I first started doing commentary, like one of the most popular videos in the FGC out there was the infamous Yipes video, you know, with the curly mustache and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, so it's all about catchphrases. And I tried going with catchphrases, and it was terrible. I am not good at catchphrases. And, you know, eventually I just found my own niche, trying to be, you know, very educational. And then at the same time, telling a lot of bad puns. You know, which I've done my whole entire life, and whatever, that's just who I am. So whatever, that's what you're going to get. And, you know, and it was interesting because for the longest of time, you know, I was doing commentary, And then there was one point in time where my commentary really dipped very badly, like just even objectively from my own viewpoint, where my knowledge started getting a little spottier, and I would say things on stream that weren't actually correct, but I would talk about it like it was correct and everything. And I started realizing, that kind of thing. And at one point in time, I made a conscious effort. I even like publicly announced that, like, I'm fixing all these things. I'm going to do better and all that stuff like that. Because there was one point in time where I was getting a ton of hate, like, on commentary. And looking back on it, and honestly, looking back at it, I really don't blame them. And that's one of the key things, right? A lot of times you get a lot of hate and you got to kind of ignore the haters, as a lot of people say. Yeah. But you also have to squeeze the truth out of what they're saying. Yeah. And, a lot of people were saying that I was always wrong about things. And I was like, wow, like, I always thought I was right. But then I realized I would think of things that I wasn't 100% sure, and I would say it, and it wasn't actually. And I was like, I got to stop doing that, which is why now a lot of times when you listen to my commentary, I'll be like, oh, you know what? I think this is -3. I'm not sure, but it's something like that. And it's definitely, like, I'll actually, try to be a little more clear that I'm not like trying to like, here's my wrong information and I'm right, kind of thing. And, you learn a lot as you do commentary. You really learn about the kind of things that you want to try to avoid. And there is a lot of ups and downs with commentary. Like, for example, I've been working a day job for a very long time, and it was about like 3 years ago now that I got laid off from the job. And then I was like, let's give esports a full-time shot, right? So now I'm doing this full-time, and it's rough. It's rough out here in these esports waters, man. I'll tell you. But I'm still trying to power through it. And again, like, for example, like, from a financial standpoint, it hasn't been the most stable thing. But honestly, the last 2 years, I've been kind of lazy about it. I really honestly feel like I've been a little lazy about it. And this year, like, one of my resolutions of the year is I'm going full in. So, like, I'm doing a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to, be more, I'm trying to work harder. I'm trying to, like, do more things professionally. Like, for example, like, everyone used to just contact me on JChensor@yahoo.com. It's like, but now I have like an official JChensor@JChensor.com, stuff like that. Like, I'm just trying to do everything more professionally, and I'm trying to make sure that I really give it my full shot before I potentially might have to go back to the day job. There are a lot of ups and downs, but again, it's just like fighting games. It's just like playing fighting games, right? When you have the downs, it's so easy to blame the game. It's so easy to blame the opponent's character. It's so easy to just be like, oh, no, this character's cheap, or your play style's cheap, or whatever like that. But the key to getting good at fighting games is you always have to know it's your fault. Right? Yeah. It's your fault. You're the one that needs to fix. And so if I haven't been as successful as I would like to be, it's nobody's fault. It's my fault. So I'm gonna take care of that. So that's what I'm planning to do this year. So I'm gonna do that. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Like, you've done. I'm actually shocked to hear that coming from you, man. Like, in the sense of like feeling like you need to improve. I'm over here like, man, you're at the top of your craft already. Like, what?
I mean, that's one of the keys too, right? Never, ever, ever feel like you don't have room to improve. Yeah. You always got to keep working. You always got to keep hustling. So, and I'm a lazy mofo. Okay. I don't know what language restrictions you have on the podcast.
No, you can say whatever you want to say.
I'm a lazy motherfucker. Okay. Let me tell you that right now. So I need to fix that. So I need to fix that. And there's a lot of things that you have to look at yourself internally. So I'm going to be better this year for sure. So,
and that's the one thing too, like, going full in, with either esports or just content creation as a whole, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to do my day job, but I just want to do this and it's going to be easy and fun. I don't think people realize if you make this full time, this is work.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, you probably know as well as I do, editing video is not fun. Yeah, exactly. Dude, like, okay, let me give you a perfect example for this, right? Maximilian, okay. You know Maximilian, right? So that guy works so hard. And like, people think he's just coming on and streaming and yelling a bunch and he gets all these donations and stuff. And no, dude, that guy works so, I can't even describe you that guy's work ethic. He works like 100-hour weeks just editing and uploading and just promotion and like he deserves everything he gets because he works so hard. And a lot of people don't, they think we're just, you know, everyone's just like, let me do a podcast, upload it to YouTube, you know, and it's not like that.
It's not. No, like I've had people tell me, they're like, oh, you know, editing videos is easy. I can edit a whole full feature video in like 10 minutes. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like exactly, a 10-minute video could take a couple hours, if not 10.
Yeah. Just wait the 2 hours for it to render, and then you see the one mistake that you made, and you're like, damn it, I need to re-render the whole damn thing again. And then you upload it to YouTube. That takes like an hour. And, oh, God. Yeah, anyways, we're not here to complain about editing.
That could be a whole different podcast. Right.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man. So, like, what has it been like for you? You know, you've been able to work with Capcom, with, you know, all the different various companies and you know, go around the world. Like, what is that like? Like, how did that come to be? Like, how does it feel?
It's so surreal, man. Like, I can actually say I've been to Kuwait, right? Like, who would have ever thought when you're growing up you would ever go to Kuwait, right? I've been to Kuwait. I've been to France. I've been to Puerto Rico. You know, I've been all over the United States. I've been to Japan now. In fact, Evo Japan last year was the first time I'd ever been to Japan, crazy enough. And it's all because of video games. Like, that's the weirdest thing, right? And, you know, at the same time, you know, I talked about the finances and, hey, my cat's coming into the shot here. But I talked about finances and all that stuff like that. But, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm not grateful, because I'm still grateful for everything that I've had these opportunities for, because without video games, I wouldn't have been able to do half of this stuff. And so, you know, it's been amazing. It's been awesome. And it's one of the reasons why I keep doing this, because it's just like, you know, one, it's cool because I love spreading the gospel of fighting games to everybody as much as I can. My goal is to get everybody to play fighting games, right? Because there's like, just like Tokido said, fighting games are something so great, and they really are. And you know, but at the same time, you know, like the fact that, you know, at my age, even though I'm an old man, but still a lot of people don't get to travel until they're like
over 25, which time?
Right, exactly. Not a day over 25. You know, a lot of people don't get a chance to travel until they retire. They're 60 or 70, and you know, but like the fact that I've been able to see all these places like that has been surreal. You know, like. For example, like, this is just like a really weird anecdote, but on the plane one time I was watching the latest Mission Impossible movie, and there's a scene that takes place in France, and he's riding the motorcycle around the Arc de Triomphe, right? And I saw that scene, and I was like, I've been there. And it's like the weirdest feeling, because like you see these things in movies and you're like, oh, that's that exotic location. But like, I literally just walked up to the Arc de Triomphe at one point, and I was like, I've been there, and it's like weird. You know? But at the same time, it's really cool, and not only that too, but when you get to see and meet people in all the different scenes, like going to Kuwait, right? You would like, you know, obviously everyone's gonna think, oh, what's there? Camels, deserts, whatever, right? But like, you go there, and like the video game fandom over there, the cosplay fandom over there, like they are so into cosplay, and like they had a contest, and they act out all of their stuff. Like the guy dressed as Joker, like he comes out and he brings like a prop chair and he sits in the chair, and their contest is like all of them performing. And like, you know, you think like, oh, everyone must be covered up. And like, no, they're just dressed like the characters. It's whatever, you know, like it's so modern over there in Kuwait. And like, it's awesome that I get to meet and see all the people and see what it's really like in a lot of these different places. It's very eye-opening. And I'll tell you this much, geek culture is geek culture. It doesn't matter where you go. Geek culture is geek culture. And it's actually really cool to see that kind of thing. So
definitely, man. Yeah. Definitely. You know, it's like at my job, my day job, because eventually towards the end of this year, I'm actually going to go full time with podcasting.
Okay, nice. Okay.
I'm terrified. I'm so terrified.
Scary, trust me. I'm like sitting here, oh yeah, I've gone full time into esports. This has been awful, man. It's been terrible. And you're like, oh my God.
But one of the people, because I work for a hospital, and one of the ladies that in the call center that I work with, she came up to me. She's like, "Oh yeah, but, my son, he's really into video games, and he plays like online competitively, and he wants to go full time with it." I'm like, "Hey, that's cool. There's a market for it." She's like, "That's video games. There's no future in that." I'm like, "Come on, come on now." I'm like, if you're saying that in this day and age, you can make a career out of anything now.
It's interesting because it's a weird dichotomy, right? Because obviously, like, the video game industry is huge. If you're in the market for making video games and stuff like that, you can make a decent living out of that. Now, obviously, there's all the stories of EA and everybody who are working like 100-hour weeks, and like they barely see their spouses and stuff like that. And there's definitely ups and downs. There's even on the eSports side, one of the concerns I have is I'm always worried about eSports bubble, because it feels like that sometimes, right? Because I think it was Heroes of the Storm recently, Blizzard just like pulled that whole league, and like all these players who play that game, all of a sudden it's like, whoop, take it out from under you. So like there's a little concern there, but the thing is, I know eventually video games will get to that point where esports is very sustainable and stuff like that. But I think it's a slow and steady growth. Slow and steady always wins the race. And I think a lot of people are pushing too hard. Like they're like, "Oh my God, this is the big thing now," and it's like, not yet.
Right?
like pull your roll a little bit, kind of. We'll get there eventually, but I think it'll take some time, and I'd rather build it up that way anyway, because then we have a stronger foundation at our feet, as opposed to relying on venture capitalists and stuff like that. So, you can make money in video games, and even playing video games, it's hard because obviously it's just like any other sport. It's really like you're Jordan or you're not, right? So it's like that kind of situation, but it's getting there, and the nice thing about the growth is eventually, every part of it, streaming, TOs, creating artwork, creating, weekly shows about it, analysts, coaches, players, cameramen, who are, filming stuff like Tempest Rob is like one of the most famous esports photographers right now. Every aspect of it will create careers for people so that the talent that they have can be applied to video games, So that's like one of the cool things about it. Like there's one person I know who goes by the name of Caitlin McGee. She's really into like physical therapy and like making sure you don't hurt your back while you sit. And she's gotten really involved in the Smash community. So she's a physical therapist, and she's found a way to get it, with video games and stuff like that. It's cool to see that kind of thing. That makes me happy when I see people get those kind of opportunities and stuff for being in the fighting game community, for playing video games. I could go on and on because there's like 7 or 8 stories that I can talk about that stuff, and it's
up to you, man. It's up to you.
So for example, Ringe, he's a commentator here in SoCal, right? He's one of the best commentators we have in SoCal right now. Done a lot of Dragon Ball FighterZ work, is at Wednesday Night Fights all the time. He's been a big NJPW fan his entire life, right? Wow. And at CEO, how Jabali had the big NJPW crossover thing? Yeah. Ringe got to commentate that. So he commentated that with Golden Boy and with Logan from the UK. And, I talked to Ringe about it, and he was like, I never thought, and like you could see he was tearing up as he was talking about it, because he got to commentate an NJPW match because of video games, and that's, like stories like that are just like fantastic. They make me emotional. Like I get teary-eyed just like talking about it. So it makes me super happy. And like that's the cool thing, is like to have, your like even like L.I. Joe, right? He's been touring with the band Vane recently. He's just like the hype guy running around on stage and everything like that. And it was because he went to one of their concerts, and the guy selling t-shirts was like, "You're L.I. Joe. The band loves you." And he was like, "What?" And like, "You have to meet him." And he just dragged Joe to go meet the band. And now he travels with them and like goes to their concerts and just jumps on stage and like gets to dive into the audience and stuff. Like it's crazy. Like the kind of things that FGC has allowed people to get to. And like, that's the kind of thing that makes me happy about it. So that, cause like to see the kind of opportunities that being in this you know, being in this hobby, you know, and reward people with. I think that's super cool. So,
I mean, this is really impressive. Like, you know, you're saying about your friend that does like the physical therapy and all that. Like, that's important. I don't think people realize that when you're holding the controller or you're using a fight stick, like the placement in your hands, like it needs support. So like that right there, that's critical. And to come up with that concept is ingenious.
Yeah, kind of like as a side comment, like there's a player named Squall, BXA Squall, Julian. He's very, very good, and he studied college and he studied physical therapy. And he talked to me one time because, you know, he was just graduating from college. He was like, "What should I do, James? Should I continue this or should I try esports because I'm really good and everything like that?" And I was like, you know what? Try the esports, but keep in mind the physical therapy in the context of esports, because in the end, you could take your you know, what you studied in college and your hobby and turn it into one thing as well, you know? And so like, it's very possible to do. And so that's a key thing. If it's something that you want to do, you want to get into the fighting community and you want to help, there's tons of ways to do it. It doesn't have to be directly for the video game. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to do that, like the physical therapy thing, like just being an artist and starting to create artwork for example, being a video editor, like the guy who edits the intros for Evo. He's like an Emmy award-winning video editor, you know, and he just got involved one time. And, you know, it's just anything that you specialize in. If you could think of a good way to incorporate it into the FGC, you know, by all means do it. David, my commentary partner, he's a lawyer, and there hasn't been a lot of esports law or a lot of precedent for that. And so he just basically went into esports law. So now he's dpg@law.com, and like he can help you if you need contracts or if you need to figure out how to so he's got to make up a lot of how things work in the esports world. And, you know, whatever your career is, you know, try to put it into the video games, and that is probably one of the best ways to turn that hobby into your career. You know what I mean? Tie it into your vocation, essentially. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. That's phenomenal. And I know you said earlier that you're a video game historian as well, man. Let's talk about that. Like, how did you, like, what draws you to that and makes you passionate about it?
It's cool. Like I said, I'm an old man. Okay, I'm an old man. I mean, I'm not a day over 25. I'm not a day over 25. Right. Okay. But, you know, I've been playing video games since the beginning, right? So like for me, I grew up on video games. You know, I've been playing, like the first video game I ever played was a game called Starhawk. Like, look it up. You can't even die in the game. It's like a vector graphics game. It's like super old. You're like, it's not the new Starhawk. There's a new Starhawk. Nah, not that one. It's like one from like 1978 or 9 or something like that. But, you know, like I've been playing video games my whole life. And honestly, video games, they mean that much to me. And so when I ran into fighting games, it just was kind of like a natural progression of that hobby. And so now I've been playing fighting games since the original Street Fighter 2. And, you know, because I'm a scientist at heart and I love studying games and stuff like that, and my memory is particularly weird that I remember random things that like people shouldn't be remembering, you know. So
I have that problem too, so I know. Don't feel bad.
As a result, I remember a lot of things about what I've gone through as a fighting game player since the original World Warrior. You know, so I like to talk about, you know, all the stuff that was going on back then. You know, like people like to ask me, how was the FGC back then? And I'm like, what do you mean? There was no FGC back then. You know, like, let me tell you how it was. You know, like it's fascinating to talk about it. And to me, it's also important to kind of maintain that information so people have the proper perspective about things, you know, like, you know, a lot of people like to talk about the glory of the arcades, you know, and I grew up in it, and where there's a lot of wonderful things about the arcade, we're still in a better place now than we were back then. You know what I mean? You know, just in terms of the information that we have. A lot of people are like, you know what? I learned fighting games in the fire and the pits, you know, like, why do you want me to hold your hand? It's like, No, whatever, dude. Like, let's get people good faster, okay? Like, they don't need to learn in those pits of fire and hell and brimstone and stuff. Let's give them all the content to make them good now so they can start enjoying it now. Like, we took us 10 years, right? Like, to get to these levels. Let's get people there in 10 weeks, 10 months. Because it's better that way. It's just overall better. So, like a lot of things about, that's kind of keeping things in perspective. Even like when Evo first started in 2002, the very first Evo, which was in Los Angeles, I took it upon myself to buy a digital camera and take as many pictures as I could. And then a couple of years later, I bought a video camera and I started just filming as much as I could. And even to this day, every time anything comes up, like there's that one Street Fighter book that came out by Steve Hendershot, right? That just came out. And if you look at the photos of like Southern Hills Golfland, those are my photos. Like they're credited to me because I'm one of the only guys who took the time to take all these pictures, because to me, it was so important to preserve that kind of history. And so on my Flickr, actually, I have a flickr.com/JChensor. I have so many old pictures from Evo 2002, from 2003 and all that stuff like that. And honestly, that's like the only photos of like those events that are out there right now, because I took the time to preserve them and stuff like that. There obviously some other people have some, but I made sure that I never lost them. I had them backed up a million times, and I made sure I kept those photos and everything. And so for me, it was just really important to maintain a lot of that stuff, because I think that information is so important. And, that's kind of one of the reasons why I consider myself a historian, because I've tried to remember all these things and I've tried to preserve all this information and stuff like that. So, because it is so important to me. It's very important to me to have all that stuff, to know where we came from, to know our history and everything like that. I think it's super important.
Yeah, and I'm glad you spoke on like how like.
By the way, I do want to mention that obviously I wasn't the first person to videotape things at B5, B4. There was the Seth Cam and all these things like that. So obviously I'm not the only person, the first. I don't want to make it sound like, oh God, thanks, I am the sole preserver of not like that. But it's one of the things that I've focused on, and I'm always happy that I've done. Obviously, there's a lot of other people that have done a lot of stuff as well. So I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm discrediting anybody else.
No, I was gonna say, like, I'm glad you talked about like what it was like with the transition of how it took us, like, because I'm like, I grew up in the arcades. I remember when Street Fighter 2 came out. I was there with my brothers, and we'd go to the arcade every other day after school. And I remember that that was a different time than now. We didn't have the FAQs. Like, we didn't figuring out how to do a Hadouken and all that. If it wasn't on like the title card, you figured it out by trial and error. Whereas nowadays you can just Google it or go on video, GameFAQs or anything. Like, you can buy a guide, you can find out this stuff easily on YouTube. But back then, I mean, it didn't have that.
It took us a couple of weeks to even figure out how to throw a sonic boom.
Right?
You could throw a sonic boom at the beginning of the round, because you could charge before round one, during round one fight. So round one fight, sonic boom, and then you would never be able to throw it again. You didn't understand the concept of it, it was like crazy. Oh, man.
This is crazy. Like, you think about like the transition of like, I remember like the 80s, it was whole about like the side scrolling beat 'em ups in the arcades. You had your Double Dragons, you had your Final Fights, your River City Ransoms, and then we transitioned over to I gotta give a shout out to Bad Dudes, because that was a good one back then.
So you mentioned River City Ransom, which is I know you're old school, that game was amazing, by the way. I love that game. So, man, God, nostalgia, dude. Anyways, continue.
Right. Like, it went from that, and then it transitioned over to when Street Fighter 2 came out. It changed the landscape.
Oh yeah.
And to be around and to see that transition, I'm like, whoa. It's I don't think we've had anything quite like that since Virtua Fighter 1, and you can tell my age now. I remember when Tekken was called, was it Brave War?
Oh, dang. Okay. I don't even know if I knew about that. What was it called, you said?
Rave War.
Brave War. Whoa.
Or Rave War. That was
War.
Yeah, and then it quickly just went to Tekken. I remember.
Okay.
I remember those days. It's like crazy.
That's even like trivia I didn't even know about. That's awesome. Good stuff. Okay, cool. I'm going to call you the FGC historian now. So, you know, you just discredited me. I see how it is. I'm leaving. No,
No, but, you know, it's something like seeing. I don't know what the next big thing is when it comes to like the FGC or with gaming. I know the current thing now is the shooter. You got your Fortnite, your PUBGs. And I think that new title, can't think of the name, but it just dropped.
Apex, right?
Yeah, Apex.
Yeah.
Everyone's crazy about that, and it's like, I like the fact that gaming now versus back then is super inclusive.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting better.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like ethnicity and gender and stuff like that, you know, this is something I talk about a lot, and it's a subject that's very important to me, you know.
We can dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest things about the FGC is that we are super diverse when it comes to ethnicity. You know, like it's just, you don't see this in a lot of other esports. It's like the perfect mixture between, you know, black players, Asian players, you know, Caucasian players, white players, Latin American players, you know, everything. It's like everywhere you go, people are playing fighting games of all walks of life. And it's fantastic. I love that. Now, at the same time, you know, when it comes to gender inclusivity, obviously gaming as a whole has a problem with that. And, you know, I'd like to try to fix that in the fighting game community, not just because, you know, like, it's because I'm a part of it and I feel like I can help try to influence people. So, you know, I've been doing a lot of stuff. You know, Persia has been starting a bunch of things. She just started the XO Academy, which is trying to support women in the FGC and in video gamings. And so I immediately went to her, was like, how can I help? And now I'm like volunteered as one of the coaches in that thing, you know. And so like, you know, we still have a long way to go. But at the same time, I still do think that the FGC is still in a better place than a lot of other places because of the ethnic, you know, acceptance. And, you know, we have players like Ricky Ortiz. Now, while she does still get some, you know, hate from, you know, a lot of the more harsh bigots out there and everything like that. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, fully accept, you know, Ricky into the scene and root for her. And, you know, she got second place at Capcom Cup in 2016 and everything like that. So, you know, there's still, you know, we're still ahead of the curve, but that the curve is still pretty far behind. So we still have a long way to go. So, yeah. But
what do you think, like, there's been this issue when it comes to, like, you know, diversity and inclusion within gaming? Is it because it's been tailored more so towards men, or like, what do you think that is? I haven't been able to figure it out.
It's a weird one because when video games first came out, you know, Pong and all that stuff like that, they were played in bars and everything, and men and women kind of played them equally and stuff. Actually, if you look at it, a lot of the original programmers for old video games, you know, back in the day, there was a lot of women programmers for those games and stuff like that. But it's just at some point in time, you know, marketing, you know, men age 18 to 30 or whatever it is always the core market. And so you start gearing stuff towards them. And then eventually all the games, you know, it's like, oh, here's this game with this, you know, girl in a bikini. Oh, here's Lara Croft, you know, and here's, you're like, you kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, boys buy this game, so let's make games for boys. But you're just kind of ignoring an entire market out there and stuff, you know. And there are a lot of women who do want to play video games, but, you know, the way that I always make the comparison, I like to make the comparison to tennis, because I think fighting games are very similar to tennis because it's one-on-one. You know, you travel all the world. There's the majors, there's the premiers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, you know, Billie Jean King did a really great job in creating the WTA and stuff. And now, after decades of the WTA being in existence, like, women tennis is not considered weird, right? Like, Serena Williams might be one of the greatest athletes of all time. You know, like, and nobody questions it. Nobody's like, well, for a girl, like, no one says that, you know, about tennis. And, you know, that just kind of shows that if you build it so that it's inclusive to them. In fact, the US Open, like maybe 8 years ago or 9 years ago, was the first year in tennis that the Grand Slam for the women's gave the same prize money as the men's. And I think it just kind of kept going from there. And, you know, as soon as you make it that kind of environment, you know, plenty of women are going to play. So a lot of people who argue that, oh, women just don't like video games, women's just aren't competitive and everything like that, it's just not true. It's just the environment is not built for them. And it's very, and I know a lot of people argue against me about this. They don't think they think I'm wrong about this, but you know, it is harder to be a girl playing video games because you do get a lot of hardships that a lot of other people don't get, you know.
That's definitely true.
I've always explained it like, if you sit down at a tournament, if you sit down at like your weekly and this dude you've never seen before sits down next to you, you're like, dang, who is this guy? How good is he? Let me play my character. I'm just going to try to beat him up and see how bad. If you see a girl sitting next to you, you're like, oh, it's a girl. Oh, let me play my secondary character. I'll go easy on her, right? Like, you've already messed it up. You know what I mean? Like, weirdly enough, I say the best way to make a girl feel included in the FGC is just to beat her down in the game as fast as possible. Treat her like everybody else. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like, don't be like, oh, I'm going to go easy on you, or I'm going to try to be friendly and nice to you because you're, you know what I mean? It's just like, just treat them like anybody else that's in the scene. And that's like one of the important things. And I've seen it over and over and over and over again. But, you know, like I said, it's hard to convince a lot of people out there that this is the situation, because at the same time, when you tell somebody that, it feels like you're attacking them, right? Like, it feels like you're going like, you're a jerk because you're a misogynist, right? And they're like, I'm not a misogynist. Like, you're like, girls just don't let, you know, look, I was the same way. When I was in junior high, I used to make lots of like homophobic jokes and everything like that. When I first started playing video games, I made plenty of jokes about women playing video games. You know, I think it was like at EVO 2010, before commentary was a real thing. A girl was playing on stream, and while I was commentating it, I made a terrible joke that probably nobody even remembers except me, because years later, I've always regretted saying it. Like, I was just like, I should have never said that, you know? And so, you know, we've all been there. And just by telling you these things is not a virtue of me saying you're a bad person, you're a misogynist. It's just that, you know, we're all doing it subconsciously, and we can all do better, you know, and we just have to be aware of it. I'm not trying to attack anybody, but it just feels that way a lot of the time, you know, and it's a weird situation. And so as a result, I just feel like it's less comfortable for women to get in there, because then you don't know if they're true fans and you don't test anybody else. But for women, you have to like give them the nerd test and all that, you know. It's such a weird kind of situation. But again, I don't think there's anything vicious about it. I don't think anyone's being intentionally malicious, right? I've always called it the magical unicorn kind of syndrome, where if you're walking in a forest and you see a unicorn walk in front of you and it's glowing, what are you going to do? You're going to walk up and touch it because you want to know if it's real or not, or if you're just like on some drugs or something like that, right? Yeah. And it's not malicious. It's not like, oh, this horse is totally fake. It doesn't exist, right? So when like, guys have wanted girls to play video games for a long time, and then when they see one, they just want to know if it's true or not, you know, in a way. So like, they all of a sudden accidentally do this thing where they're like, oh, how true of a nerd are you, you know? And it's not malicious, but it's not intentionally malicious, but it's at its core, it is malicious. You know what I mean? And just bringing awareness to it, I feel like is kind of one of the key things to changing it. So it's why I talk about it a lot. So I apologize if I go on this tangent, but like I said, this is a topic that's very important to me. So.
No, dude, all organic conversations is the direction we're going, because this is actually one of the questions I want to talk about. I see it a lot, and it's like, I personally know a lot of women that do game. They grew up playing games, and it's like, you have to look at it. It's also not only a video game thing, it's a societal issue too. You know, this whole thing that we pushed this narrative that, you know, if there's a girl, they only have to do, you know, play with Barbies or watch other stuff. Or boys, I know, you know, growing up, you know, 80s, 90s, it was G.I. Joe's, Transformers, you know, pushing. You know, and it's like, there are some girls that I know that are streamers, like my wife. She's actually a streamer.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
She's one of the top Twitch streamers in Hawaii. And, you know, one of the things, like when I met her, I kind of, like, a part of me was like, wait, you you play video games? I had that mentality. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. You know, it's just like, oh, you want to see my collection? And I went over and to her apartment and I saw it. She had like Ghosts and Goblins. Like she played that. She tried to beat it. She had Double Dragon. She had Killer Instinct. She had all the classics. And I'm like, wait, you don't ever talk about this. She's like, I just never felt the need to.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Or you'll get the women that are like, oh, but if I talk about it, then I get the shit test from guys.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that does need to stop.
Right. Exactly. And that's like I said, that's awareness. And you know, it's not meant as an attack on anybody who accidentally does it. You know, it's very unintentional. It's very subconscious. But you know, bringing awareness to it hopefully just makes, like, when I see girls at tournaments now, you know, I always ask, what game are you playing? Who do you use? As opposed to, who are you here with? You know, like, like which player is your boyfriend? You know, like, you know, it's just like these things you just, you know, you have to realize you got to be more aware of and stuff. You know, it's like I said, if I ever asked like, oh, who are you here with? It was never meant to be an insult. Like, I'm not like, you can't play fighting games. It's just, it's a subconscious cultural society thing burned into my brain from years and years and years of being fed that rule. And then you just have to be aware of it, break that rule, and understand that the world is not how you thought it was. You know, I mean, perfect example is that, you know, I talk to my grandparents and some of the stuff that they tell you about like boys and girls and, you know, sexual relations and all these things like that, you can tell still came from that day and age where it just didn't make any sense at all, because it was to discourage girls from sleeping around and stuff like that, you know? So they would just tell all these lies. And, you know, every time you're in your age, you don't want to believe that your society has been feeding you lies, because you hear all these old things. You're like, oh, that's old fashioned. I know what's up now. But in all honesty, you're being fed as much old-fashioned, like misinformed stuff now that 100 years later from now, people will look back and be like, what the hell are these like these old people thinking, you know? Like, I like the harmless examples that I always bring up, right? For example, is like everyone thinks cats right here like milk, right? And that's because of Tom and Jerry, because Tom always tried to get milk, and cats are lactose intolerant. Yep. You can't feed cats milk, right? Mice, you know, liking cheese, right? Why do mice like cheese? Because of Tom and Jerry. And in fact, you can catch mice with peanut butter better than you can with cheese, right? They like peanut butter more. Rabbits eat carrots. That's a Bugs Bunny thing, because he eats carrots to imitate Clark Gable from the movie It Happened One Night, because he was sitting there eating a carrot while standing on the side of the road. So they just wanted him to have that suave personality. And now rabbits all love carrots. You know, like all these things that we believe in aren't necessarily true. And when it's something harmless like that, you're like, that's cool. But when someone questions your like, oh, women can play video games, they like video games, and then there's just something about that makes people not want to just be like, oh, that's cool, okay. But they're like, no, you know, leave my thing the way it is, you know, like it's a weird thing about the way the brain works, but you know, that's just how it is. So
it's true, man. It's true. And it's like I like what you said earlier, like don't, and I look at it like this, like when I go in and compete, or if I play with other girls, I don't treat them any different than I would treat a guy gamer. And I think when we stop trying to, you know, like having that preconceived notion, we gotta treat them differently. Oh, we gotta treat them delicately. No, they pick up the sticks, treat them the same as you would anyone else. Look, I'm probably one of the top, and I'm not, okay, fine, it's arrogant. I'm one of the top Cody players in Hawaii. All right. So if I play against a girl that uses Cody, I'm like, no. This my Cody's better. I don't care who you are. So. I mean,
it was very educational for me, because one of my ex-girlfriends would come to like Wednesday night fights and stuff, right? And she brought her own joystick. She would enter, you know, like Blaze Blue, or she would enter Persona and play. She brought her own joystick, and she modded the joystick herself. It was one of the small joysticks. She put in her own Sanwa buttons and a nice joystick and everything like that. And she was standing there waiting to play, and there was another person in the arcade and like saw her and was like, oh, do you know how to use that? And she was like, I modded the controller myself. I put the buttons in there. And he was like, this is light punch, this is medium punch, this is like, and then you hear about that, and you're just like, God damn it, you know, and then you just kind of get that realization of how different it is, you know, and it was a really big eye opener for me. And so, you know, I've kind of vowed to make sure that shit doesn't keep happening. You know, I wanna change that as much as I can. So.
See, and that is the shit that needs to stop. And you know, anyone who's listening, if you're watching, if this is something that you engage in, like just stop, think, how would you like it if someone did that to you? And this applies not only to video games, but to anything. Anime, any type of fandom, any type of sport, it doesn't matter. Treat people equally. Like if we have a society that is progressing, there are some things we should hold on. And one of the old things that I think we should hold on is treat people equally.
Right. And like, if a dude comes to your house and you start watching basketball, you don't look at the dude and go, so that guy's playing the power forward. Their position is usually played deep in the paint, and they put like you don't do that to people, right? Like you just assume they like, and then you know, like for video games, it's got to be the same thing. If a girl's there at a fighting game tournament, you know, just assume they're there to play like everybody else, and if they're not, then talk to them about it, but like you would anybody else. You know what I mean? Just don't be like, oh, which game do you play? Oh, I'm just here to support my boyfriend, and don't be like, oh, well. Of course you are, duh. You know, like, oh, well, you know, like, don't be like that, right? So, because I know dudes who are there to support their girlfriends in fighting game tournaments. You know, that happens too. So, you know, just treat them like anybody else, and that's the key right there, honestly.
And, you know, also not only on that, but like, what are your thoughts, or do you feel that there is toxicity? Like within not just gaming, but within the FGC as a whole, and if so, like how do we combat it?
Well, the toxicity exists largely, like I said, on a gender spectrum. That's probably the biggest area of toxicity that the FGC has to work on, and we're all still working on that. But like you said, this is not an excuse, by the way. But like all gaming communities are like this. In fact, most communities of anything is kind of like this, right? Like you go to any geek space and there's just, it's just kind of it's like toxic for a lot of women. Like the Gamergate stuff that just happened, right? Is a perfect example of that. Now, having said that, you know, that doesn't mean I'm going to sit by idly and just be like, oh, well then if everything's like that, then who cares if the fighting game is like that? You know, like, no. I'm part of the fighting game community. I want to make my space better. So I'm going to work on that. So I'm going to do what I can there. And so the toxicity does exist. But like I said, one of the hardest things about it, I was even having a conversation with someone on Facebook about, you know, the concept of toxic masculinity, right? And a lot of people hear that phrase and they interpret it as, you know, men behaving toxically, like men being bad. And that's not what toxic masculinity is. It's a concept, right? Just like the toxicity in the fighting game community towards women, it's not people being mean to women. It's just this concept that's buried inherently in our culture that we don't mean to. There's nothing like, there's very few things that people are intentionally doing to be jerks. Like if you're being toxic intentionally, that's not toxic masculinity. That's you're an asshole, right? Like that's just all it is, right? But like, you know, the toxicity towards women in the fighting game community isn't so much that men are being complete. Like obviously there are bad situations, you know, like in the smashing, we've had reports of sexual assault here and there, even obviously in the FGC with a very prominent player recently, right? So, you know, a lot of things like that, obviously it happens and everything, but you know, it's for the most part, to fix a lot of those things is to fix the overall, you know, toxicity towards women in the scene, you know, and like I said, most of it that we can fix is the subconscious one, right? So when the people are actually being abusive or the people out there are actually being terrible people, like that's going to be hard to fix. But the key is whenever the woman reports it, you know, it's so easy. You see it happen all the time in the scenes where it's like the guy is like, well, she's just crazy. And everyone's like, yeah, she's crazy. You're the best, you know, and they don't believe her anymore and kind of things like that. It's easy to forgive. And a lot of women don't talk about it because no one believes them. You know what I mean? And if we can fix a lot of the subconscious problems, and that's part of the subconscious problems, a lot of people go, I've done it in the past as well. You hear your favorite athlete did something terrible and you're like, I don't want to believe that this person did that, and it's just like, everybody does it. And it's like I said, I'm not saying that people are malicious. I'm not saying people are terrible people. It's human nature. It's subconscious. It's hard to get away from stuff that you've been programmed to believe for years and years. You know what I mean? And if we fix the subconscious part of it, then when the sexual assault, when someone does get called out for sexual assault, we'll believe the girl more readily. The scene will believe it more readily. They'll take her more seriously. That'll allow more women to call people out. That will solve the asshole people that we can't fix. You know what I mean? Like then they can get removed from the community or banned and stuff like that. And so, we have to work on the subconscious level first, and then we can start getting to that side of things. Because right now the biggest problem is things like this happen all the time, but women just can't talk about it because it's an uphill battle from the start, and it's an and for a lot of women, it's better. It might even be sadly better if they don't say anything, because then they don't get doxxed, they don't get attacked, and they don't have to move or stuff like that. So it's a weird situation. So that's why I bring up a lot of the subconscious things, because I feel like that's kind of at the root of the problem. If we can fix that, we can get to the bigger problems at that point. So,
and that's one of the things too. And, I want the audience to know, like, we're not saying this is not an attack on guys. This is not at all.
Exactly. And to be fair too, the toxic masculinity or the toxicity towards women can be pervaded by women as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not, like I said, toxic masculinity is not men being toxic. That's not what it's about. It's a concept. It's a concept that, what a man is supposed to be is toxic. You know what I mean? The idea is toxic. No one is actually being vile or, intent. Most of it is not that. Obviously, there are some people who are vile, and like I said, that's not toxicity. That's just them being assholes, and that's a whole different problem. But it's men are. I'm not saying men are bad. I'm not saying women are like we protect women. I just said, if you play a girl in a fighting game, just like beat her up as badly as you can in the game. Obviously, I mean, I don't want that to be like clipped and all of a sudden like people are like, oh my god, James, look what James said. Obviously, it's not about protecting them. It's about just treating them fairly, and that's just all it is, right? So that's all it comes down to. So
yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate you going into depth on that, because I think with I'm just gonna say, I think with the whole the topic of toxic masculinity, it's been misconstrued so much. I think a lot of people are confused about it. Some people take it personally. Some people don't understand what it is. And with society now, with social media, we have instant access. I mean, you can look up anything you want on a phone at your fingertips, but the problem is there's so much misinformation that it confuses a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, the whole, like the Gillette thing, I think a lot of people feel some kind of way about that. And it's like, you could take that as, hey, there's some things that men do. Yeah, you kind of need to stop. That's not cool.
Right.
But then some people are taking it like, oh, that's an attack on men. It's like,
that's the hardest part too. And if you already are leaning in a certain way, like if you hear toxic masculinity and feel a little bit attacked, and you're starting to lean this way, you just have to hear someone say something over here and it'll just draw you in over there. And now all of a sudden that person's misinformation has now affected your opinion on the whole situation. And, without getting too political about it, but obviously we're seeing a lot of that just nowadays in our country, right? With the government. It's like, we can't, like, everything is either all the way left or all the way right. Like, there's no like gray area anymore these days. And
it's so hard being for me, I'm a centrist. Like, I can sit in the middle. I can hear stuff from people on the right, people on the left, and I'm like, let me think about it.
Right.
I see your point. How about we do this? It's so hard sitting in the middle, because it's like on both sides. I get it from like, especially like with voice actors I've had on. They're left. Right. I've got friends that I do political commentators that are left and right.
Right.
And it's like, I feel like I'm tugged in both directions if I don't agree with one or the other. And I'm like, look, I'm just not going to say anything to be safe.
You know, I'm just gonna to pull it away from politics, just because it might get too risky. But this is me and Street Fighter 5. Okay, let me tell you right now, because I have had like long conversations about this is the problem with 5. This needs to be fixed. This is the problem. And then I've had long conversations like, dude, Street Fighter 5 is fun. It's good. Like, it's not as bad as you keep saying it. You know, like. I'm like in this weird like tug of war on Street Fighter 5 as well, because like I definitely see the good in it, I definitely see the bad in it, you know, but like it's not the worst thing ever, like a lot of people say, you know. It's weird. It's a weird situation.
It's so insane because like if you like, especially if you go on Twitter, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone who talks about Street Fighter on Twitter, but if you're a casual looking to get into it, or you have some type of interest, especially in Street Fighter 5, good luck.
Right.
Because I've seen some people like, oh, you got a low IQ if you like Street Fighter 5, and I'm over here like, it's a game. Come on now.
It's like it's so easy just to want to shit on the game because it's kind of the in thing to do, you know what I mean? And you know, and again, having the history that we do with video games, playing fighting games forever, God, like we play, like I don't know about you, but I played Champion Edition, okay, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. There was one character in that game, okay, his name was M. Bison, and that was it. Because nobody else could do anything to him. And you're trying to talk about how bad these games are, you know, and I'm just sitting there looking at like, you guys don't even know how well balanced Street Fighter 5 is right now. You don't even know like how carefully thought out this game can be in certain aspects, you know. And it's like it's a weird situation. It's a weird time.
Oh man, if they had to go through what we went through in the 90s with fighting games, and before the whole concept of balancing characters, ooh, I mean,
when they just didn't care, they're like, let's just make these characters do this. That one's broken. Oh well.
Like if anyone wants to talk about a broken character in a fighting game, I have one. His name is Rugal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, which KOF? Which KOF was that?
Oh my God. He was broken in '94.
Okay.
He was ultra broken in '95.
Yeah. He's like, I always think of like CVS1 Nakaruru was like super broken. Like Cable Air Hyper Viper Beam ×4 was discovered on day 1, you know, and like negated half the cast and stuff, you know. But then MVC2 turns out to be one of the greatest fighting games of all time, right? So you stick with it, man. You stick with it.
Oh man. So you know, speaking of that, and you know, winding down to the last couple of questions, what is like your opinion on like the state of the fighting game community right now, and fighting games as a whole? Like, what do you think we're at?
It's an interesting situation because right now it's like the greatest time to be a fighting game fan and the worst time to be a fighting game fan. Because like, honestly, there's just so many games out there right now that if you don't like one game, like if you don't like Street Fighter 5, that's totally fine because there's a lot to not like about the game, right? So if you don't like it, you will find another fighting game that you like, right? Like it could be Unist, right? It could be something like Skullgirls, like a niche game that you didn't even know about, and you go play Skullgirls and you're like, oh my God, why is this game so amazing, you know? And dude, Skullgirls, like, just go mess with the training mode and you will fall in love with the game. It's the best training mode in all the fighting games, right? And so like there's just so many, like you will find the game that you enjoy out there. But at the same time, it's tough because there are so many fighting games that, like, it's kind of spreading the scene out a little bit. You know, we have enough players now that I don't think it's too much of a danger. But, you know, back in the day, you know, Tokido would play everything. And it was cool seeing Tokido play in everything. And now Tokido only plays Street Fighter because that's how much work it takes to get good at a fighting game. You have very few rare people like Sonic Fox and Kasanova who can play more than one game and actually be good at them, you know. But like for the most part, you know, players, you know, you don't see in multiple games as much anymore. And so the scene gets kind of spread out a little bit, and that's kind of tough. And not only that, but that also creates the fact that Twitch chat is just a never ending, this game sucks, my game's better, this game sucks, my game's better, this game sucks. Like, it's just all, like, more people talk about hating the game that's currently on the stream than people are actually enjoying watching it typing in the stream, you know. Yeah. It's crazy. And as a result, it's kind of a problem. And, you know, I'm the rising tide raises all boats kind of guy, you know. So, like, you know, like, okay, say Street Fighter V is not your thing, right? Go play something else. Dragon Ball FighterZ is not my thing, right? I don't really enjoy the game that much. But I'm not going to tell anybody the game sucks. I don't think that anybody's wrong for liking the game. In fact, I think the game is great. I think it's wonderful because I know a lot of people who absolutely love that game, and to them, it's like the greatest fighting game they've ever played. And I'm not going to be like, well, you're just low IQ and you're stupid because, you know, like, it's not about that. You know, it's like, if you don't like a fighting game, that's cool. Like, just like promote your game. Don't talk smack about the other game, you know, and just understand that other people like things that you don't. Like, if someone likes Street Fighter V, it's not for the money. It's not because they're shilling. It's not any of that stuff. It's because they genuinely enjoy the game. Like, let people enjoy things, you know. That's just how it is. And so with that many fighting games, it is tough because you do get a lot of that kind of inherent rivalry, hate kind of thing going on. And if you're new into the fighting game community, you'll come in like, oh, I really want to watch Evo. You jump in the Evo chat and you just see all these people like, this game sucks, you're an idiot. And you're just like, why do I want to be a part of this? And then you're gone, you know. And like, exactly. And, you know, it's about trying to get more people in, you know. So if someone comes in learning to play Street Fighter V and you're a Tekken fan, right? That Street Fighter fan may eventually go, you know, I don't know if I like this game as much. And someone will go, what about Tekken? And they'll be like, let me try this, right? So, you know, these people that you're insulting for playing Street Fighter V, you could chase out of the community, whereas they could become a person who eventually learns to like your game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, these are all players, people that we want to stay in the community. Who cares what they're playing? There's so much cross-pollination in fighting games that let it happen. You know what I mean? Like, let it happen. Don't chase people out for playing a game that you think it's cool to insult. You know what I mean? And it's just, anyways.
It makes me think of like other games, like when you think of like the games that crossed over, like, you know, your Capcom versus SNKs, your Street Fighter cross Tekken, like games like that with two completely different fan bases, different mechanics and play styles, but you have people that try a character from the other game and like, I'm curious about that. What do they play like in their own environment? Like, that's amazing.
So Eunice has better numbers this year, like last year in 2018.
I love Eunice.
Dude, Eunice is so great, right? And like, the numbers for that game are up. Like, it's one of the only fighting games that has a clear rise in like playing and stuff like that. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle had a part to do with that, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I've never seen who Aurier or, you know, or Hyde or Linne and all these characters are. But now that you've learned them in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, you'll be like, hey, look, Eunice is on sale on Steam. Let me buy this. And I know Linne, so let me just mess with her. And then all of a sudden they discover one of the best fighting games out there on the market right now. Yep. Right? You know, it's just, it's like you said, like a lot of it could even come from a lot of that cross franchise mixes and stuff. Yep. So, you know, and like I said, any one of these guys could become one of the best Eunice. This average Street Fighter player could become one of the best Eunice players. He just hasn't found it yet. Yeah. Don't chase him out by telling him he's stupid because he likes Street Fighter V. Just be like, hey, I really like Eunice. Do you want to try playing it? You know, a little bit kind of happened with that yesterday when Brian F got yelled at about the Koime Enbu thing. And then he eventually played it on his stream because everybody was yelling at him. So, and then a whole bunch of people like saw the game and like, actually some people bought it and stuff like that, you know, like, dude, like, don't hate on people for playing certain games. Just let them play it, and eventually the craziest things could happen. I'll always say positivity is always more powerful, right? So
yeah,
That's how it is.
Yeah, man. Like one of there are 4 games that I rotate in and out. It's Eunice, which I love. I'll play that. I'll fall asleep playing that game, and I'll play it. I love Eunice. Lene is my main character.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I play Eunice. I love fighting EX Layer, which I think is a really good game that people, I feel like they're sleeping on that one.
Yeah. See, I haven't even played it yet. So, like, I'm one of those people who's sleeping on it. So this is too many games. There's too many games, man.
But yeah, so it's Eunice fighting EX Layer, King of Fighters 14, which I love.
Yeah.
I can barely find matches because I don't think a lot of people are playing that online. I don't know why.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And then the other one is Street Fighter 5, which I'll play it. I don't play it as much. Like, I was known for just streaming that exclusively, but then like I'm just playing other games, and I have people like, "Oh, you're not playing that?" I'm like, "No, I'm playing Eunice today," or I'm playing, or actually no. There's another game, BlazBlue, Central Fiction. I love it.
Oh, okay.
Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2, and people like, oh, I've never seen that or I've never heard of that, but I'm gonna try that out. Is it good? I'm like, yes. And like you could introduce so many more players, and like you said, you take an average Street Fighter 5 player, which I'm below average at best, but I'm really good at fighting EX Layer or King of Fighters and all that. And it's like, you can do that. Like you can include people. They may not like one thing, but something else can give them the opportunity to be good at it and enjoy it and feel good about it. You should never take that from people.
And the worst thing about it too is, like, let's say you are an average Street Fighter 5 player and you are looking at Injustice 2 and you're like, I might want to play Injustice 2 because I'm a DC fan, right? Yeah. And then the Injustice player comes up to you and goes like, why are you playing that shitty Street Fighter 5? This game sucks, or you should play Injustice 2. Injustice 2 is the best. And then you'll be like, what are you talking? Injustice 2 sucks. You know what I mean? Like, you just killed their desire to play it because you're being negative about their game, so they want to be negative about your game. And like then they'll see everything everybody else says, like, oh, Injustice 2 is boring, it's so zoning, and then they'll start parroting that. And now all of a sudden you just lost to the potential Injustice player because you had to shit on Street Fighter 5, right? You know, and that's just how it is. Like, just the more negativity breeds negativity. So like, you know, positivity breeds positivity. So, you know, I know it's a pipe dream in a lot of ways, you know, because it's the internet and it's just human nature. But, you know, I feel like we can make strides to make it better. So it's possible. It's possible.
Definitely. One of my last couple questions is like about the influence of esports, you know, how that's changing gaming as a whole. And you know, it's growing because now it's officially being considered a sport. It's on ESPN. It's getting up there. Like, what do you think its influence is on, you know, trying to be a professional gamer or a professional FGC player? Like, how do you think that's impacting it?
It's a tricky one because I'm not as optimistic as a lot of other people on this topic right now, because I feel like one of the biggest weaknesses of esports right now is that it's over-promising. There's a lot of things out there. I mean, we see the situation with, for example, like Echo Fox. They signed a bunch of players, and then all of a sudden they dropped a bunch of players. You know, I have no confirmation for this, but my theory is that, you know, they probably just had a bunch of investors. And the investors invested in it, and they weren't making anything, so they pulled out, right? So, like, I feel like esports is just kind of over-promising. They're calling themselves the next big thing, and they're doing it not by proving it, but by trying to force it into everybody's brain that esports is the next big thing. I don't think it is yet. I don't think we're even remotely there yet. You know, I've been talking about this a lot to a lot of different people. So, you know, apologies if you've heard me talk about this before, even on my own stream. But like, you know, a lot of people talk about how the LCS finals for League of Legends had more viewers than the Super Bowl. And so they're like, oh, 200 million people watched the Super Bowl, right? Isn't that really impressive? You know, one, you know, LCS is not charging a few $1 million for a 30-second ad to be run on their show, right? On their stream. And two, 200 million, like 200 million of like the 202 million people come from China. Like, I didn't even think it was that bad. I thought it was like maybe 60% of the people from China, but I looked it up and it's literally like 200 million of the 202 million, like literally, like not even an exaggeration, came from China. And so 2 million came from the rest of the world. And so like esports is like, how do you tell an investor that, right? How do you tell an investor like, hey, we have more viewers than the Super Bowl, and they're like, cool, let's invest in this, and you don't get anything from it because 99% of your audience can't buy your product. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like esports is pushing too hard. I've seen it before from early esports guys, like who I talked to from Twitch. They're like, oh yeah, it's great, everything's great, like we're the big thing, look at all this, and I'm just like, what are you doing? And so at this point, I think we're trying to make it grow too fast. And so we end up with situations where JChensor and JDCR are sponsored by Echo Fox and get dropped right before the Tekken World Finals, you know? So in a way, the esports stuff, while it's growing, I'm scared of the bubble, right? I think I talked about that a little bit. I'm scared of the esports bubble. The fighting game community, I think, is safe because we're very grassroots oriented. So like CEO, Combo Breaker, Evo, they're all run by themselves. There's no investment in there. No one can take money away from it. As long as the people who are running those events want to run those events, and as long as fighting games are being played, they will still be able to run those events. That's the great thing, right? It's not like MLG getting bought by Activision, and then it turns out that MLG was like a few $1 million in debt, you know, that Activision had to pay out and stuff like that. You know, it's not like one of those things because that's all venture capitalists, right? And the venture capitalists can pull out on you eventually and stuff. So while the esports stuff is growing, you know, I think it's dangerous in a way that, you know, people are going to like hope for too much. Like people are going to be like, well, I'm going to play video games because I'm going to be like Justin. I'm going to be like Justin Wong, right? And they're going to try to play. They're not going to make any money. And again, it's like, it's hard because it's very much the 1%. It's the Jordan, you know, there's Jordan, and then there's that guy who's playing at the Blacktops in Texas. You know what I mean? You know, there's those kind of situations, and people don't want to believe that video games are the same way. You know, everyone feels like they're good at video games, but that's a whole nother topic I can talk about at some other time. But like, you know, so it is kind of risky. There is a little bit, like for me, the reason why I like to talk about this topic too is because as a commentator, I make video games and fighting games seem awesome and exciting. These guys are heroes and everything. And I feel kind of responsible. Like I feel like I might be luring people to their doom, you know, in a way. And so, you know, I just want to be upfront about that we're not quite there yet, right? Now, do I believe we'll get there? Oh, yeah. Eventually, it'll get to the point where I'm sure esports will be this big industry and people will start truly making money, and the money will spread a little bit more beyond just like Riot making all the money, right? So I'm sure it will get to that point. I don't think it'll get there as fast as we want it to. I don't think it'll get as fast as we say it will. It'll get there, but it's important, I think, to keep your expectations tempered, and slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. So that's kind of how I feel about that whole entire thing. So, you know, it's depressing to see Justin and Tokido no longer part of Echo Fox and all these things like that. But, you know, like I said, just don't, instead of thinking doom and gloom, just use that as a lesson to understand what the landscape really is. And once you really know what the landscape is, you can build off of that intelligently and really make something that nobody can take away from us, which is what the fighting game community has been pretty good at doing so far. So I hope we can keep that up.
Okay, cool. One of my last questions is, or last two questions rather, is when it comes to like someone who wants to like get into fighting games, or if they want to get into commentary, like, what would you say is a good way for them to start? They just hop in, go to their locals, you know, start watching matches and calling commentary, or like, how do you think they should go about it?
Locals is almost always one of the most important things, and that's tough because not everybody has locals, and in fact, more people don't have locals than do have locals, right? So, but if you can find a local, going there and playing is important, and not worrying about your results right away. Make friends, become a part of the community, and just really start, you know, making sure you sit down and play a bunch of casuals with them, ask people questions, find the good people in your community. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, there are communities where some people are just jerks and they will ostracize you for some unknown reason, you know, because they just don't like the way you look or something. I don't know. But like, I've heard stories about people going to the locals and just everybody being total assholes to them. If that happens, you know, find other means, sure. But like, if you can go to your local, if you can make friends with people, if you can be a part of a community, it's usually the best way to start, because you can learn by talking to other people. People can help you. And then, you know, if you have a local streamer and they're streaming it, you can just say, hey, can I jump on commentary, and jump on and do commentary, right? Otherwise, if you want to be a commentator, practice at home a lot, watch some match videos. There's a lot of channels that upload, you know, CFN replays that have no commentary. So just watch those and commentate them. And, you know, find some bad matches, because you'll have to commentate some bad matches. And that's infinitely harder than commentating good matches. Let me tell you right now, right? When you're doing 8 a.m. pools at Evo, oh my God, some of those matches you're just watching and you're like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's like, you don't want to talk bad about anybody, but they're just making bad decisions the whole time, but they're learning, and you don't want to like discourage them by being like, what the hell? Why is this guy even playing? You know, like, you don't want to do that kind of thing like that. So, you know, learn to commentate all sorts of different kinds of matches. And as a player, I mean, honestly, the number one thing about the player is, being a player, is just know that it's going to take work. If you want to be good and competitive, there will be those guys out there like NuckleDo and Punk that for some reason just seem to pick it up like nothing. Like even someone like Sonic Fox, who you think, oh, he's just born like playing fighting games. But you know what? Since he was young, he was playing fighting games with his older brother, right? His older brother is one of the top players in Dead or Alive, right? So he's had that pedigree his whole life. So he was literally raised playing fighting games practically. So no wonder he's so good, right? So, you know, so even he had to put in years. We just don't see it because he's young and he came out of nowhere, so to speak. And it feels like he's just amazing all of a sudden, right? But everybody who's good has put in the work. And a lot of times when you put in the work, it always comes down to you admitting that you made the mistake. You know, one of the most fundamental things about fighting games is if you watch, like, let's say you watch like NuckleDo play Guile, right? And you play Guile and you can't win. The Guile that you're playing is not any different than the Guile NuckleDo is playing. He doesn't have more levels. He doesn't have better gear. He doesn't have extra special. He's using literally the same Guile that you are. And if he's winning and you're not, that means it's your fault. It's your fault. And to get good at fighting games, one of the toughest things about it is it really is you have to look at yourself internally. I was talking about that earlier when we started, how much of fighting games is about that, you know, understanding that it's your fault when you're not winning. And so to get good at fighting games, you have to be willing to accept that. Don't blame the game. Don't blame the characters. You know, don't blame the outside source. You know, tier lists are tier lists. They're just there to set your expectations properly. But then you guys got like Doomsnake, who finished like top 8 every major, you know, with Vega, you know, who's low tier. But, you know, you know, again, if you're not winning, you know, really take a deep look inside yourself and figure out how you can fix that, and then reach out to people as well, because there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help these days, and that is a big difference now, and that is something that's really awesome about the FGC currently.
Awesome, man. And gotta ask you, pad or stick, which is better? Which do you prefer?
I prefer stick because I grew up on stick, right? But nowadays, play whatever makes you comfortable. Because NuckleDo is a pad player, and he's one of the best. In fact, most of the best players are pad players these days. You know, like Punk is a pad player, right? Like whatever makes hitbox. Like I personally think the hitbox is probably the future. Like everyone should be playing on a hitbox. But you know, whatever works for you, use that because it works. Someone was playing on a racing wheel stick. Some people have been playing on. Whatever works for you, go. Some people play on a keyboard. I've seen people play like on a keyboard, you know. So whatever works for you. The human is an amazing machine. They can adapt to so many different things. So what works for you is what's best for you. Don't jump to one or the other because someone says it's better. Because honestly, there are advantages to both, like to the pad and the stick. There's advantages to either one of them, and so whatever suits you, go for it. That's my opinion.
Awesome. So, you know, when will we see you out here in Hawaii at our local scene with either VGH 808 or Video Gamers Hawaii 808 out here on Oahu, or FGC Hawaii on the Big Island.
Dude, God, please, I would love to go back. Like I said, I was saying earlier, I love Hawaii. I love Hawaii. I've been there a few times. I've met a lot of the guys from the FGC there. Like I know Leviathan, like I know Dane and all these other guys on in Honolulu and stuff like that. So like I know, like I've been to the Hawaii suite a bunch of times at Evo and everything. So I just love it out there. Like every time I go to Hawaii, I feel so relaxed. Like I can't even explain just how chill I feel there. So anytime you guys want me to go, I'm down. I'm out. I'm there. So.
Oh man. Last question, James. I know you got to go, but last question is like, what are some projects that you have in the works that people should keep their ear to the ground and eyes open to look out for?
I mentioned earlier that I'm really trying to put my nose to the grindstone here this year. So I've been really working hard on trying to stream more on twitch.tv/JChensor, a lot of beginner stuff. I used to do these videos called First Attack where I teach basic concepts of fighting games, but like they're so outdated now, and YouTube like has them in weird like aspect ratios, and it's weird. So like I have a hit confirming episode that's on Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So like I'm gonna update them all to like be more modern stuff. I'll do like hit confirm episodes for Street Fighter 5 and Dragon Ball and stuff like that. I have a project called the FGC Locals of the World, which I take people's weeklies or even events from all over the world, and I restream them on my channel basically. So they give me their VOD, and then I just basically restream it on mine, do commentary for it, and then promote their scene as much as I can during that particular episode and things like that. It is, just full disclosure, it is a paid service right now, just because, man's got to eat, so.
Yeah.
But, I try not to charge much at all for that, because like I said, I'm streaming it on my channel. There's obviously huge benefits to myself. And so obviously everything's negotiable and everything like that. So that's one project that I'm trying to ramp up and stuff. And so I've got a lot of little things that I'm trying to do, but keep an eye on youtube.com/UltraChenTV as well, because a lot of that content I'll be uploading over there as well. So you'll see a lot of that stuff there.
All right, awesome. Hey, I lied. I have one final question.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
All right. Did you have fun?
Oh yeah, I had a great time. That was awesome. good talk. So yeah. And, awesome. Again, sorry if I rambled on a lot of things, but like some of those are like those topics that I need to get on my soapbox for. So.
Hey man, there's nothing about it. No worries. I told you, like the Kasanova Podcast. All organic conversations. You can say whatever you want. There's no filter, no need. Whatever you want to say, go ahead. This is a platform. You can say however you want to say it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I had a great time. So.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for everyone who's watching, who's when this video goes up, or who's listening, whether it be on iTunes or other platforms. You'll be able to find us on youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova. It'll also be, I'm going to start trying to put podcasts on Twitch, because apparently podcasts and Twitch are really like, I need to get on there. Apparently a lot of people are telling me I need to do that. Okay, so I'll do it, okay? I'll put it on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova. You can catch it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. I believe we're now on iHeartRadio. I believe, I'm supposed to respond to one of the other outlets I'm supposed to be on. I think Podcast One and Sirius XM. I was supposed to. Yeah, it reminds me. I need to respond. I'm gonna edit that part out of the podcast.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about that, because I need to get on that too, dude. Like the Spotify thing, dude. So yeah.
Yeah, man. I'll shoot you all the information, whether you want to be on Spotify or if you want to do like I do it. Basically, I upload one and it re-shares to all.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah, so, that would be good. Okay.
So I'll definitely. I'll go ahead and I'll shoot that information over to you today. I think you're 2 hours ahead of me, right?
Yeah. Just 2 hours, I believe.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as soon as we wrap it up and I get everything together, I'll just go ahead. I'll shoot it to you on Twitter.
Yeah, just send it to me in DMs. That's fine. Slide right on in. So there you go.
All right, cool. All right, and everyone, thank you for watching and listening. James, thank you so much for coming on. It's such an honor to have you on, man. We got to get you out to Hawaii. We're gonna make a movement, James, for Hawaii.
All right, let's do it. I'm 100% in favor of that. I'm down, so I'll back that 100%.
All right. And people, links to all of James's outlets are in the description down below. Whether you're listening or watching, just go down to the description. You'll be able to find it. And with that being said, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova Podcast? Well, I hope you did. And if you did, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And let us know what we can improve upon, what you liked, what you didn't like, and all that good stuff. And just make sure you always have a good time. That being said, this is your boy Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out, and I'll catch you on the next episode.